So, welcome to another episode of Blocks and Barriers with me, Tracy, the health coach. Today, I'm excited. Yet again, we have another special guest. We have Chris Freer. Chris is the founder of Freer Thinking, a motivation specialist and a contributing author of the #1 international bestseller, Rattled Awake. With a background shaped by personal health challenges, Chris helps individuals break free from self-doubt, overcoming procrastination, and taking control of their mindset. Through coaching, speaking, and writing, Chris empowers people to shift their thinking, build confidence, and create lasting change in their lives. His clients have described him as incredibly caring and supportive. Chris's personal experience and supportive nature are exactly what we need today to break through feeling stuck. He shows that even the toughest health challenges can be approached in a way that leads to a healthier, happier life. So welcome, Chris.
Wow. Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow.
You are so welcome. You are so welcome. So I like to do a little icebreaker. So I'll ask you, if you were to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with someone, anyone, any three people, who would you choose for breakfast? Who would you choose for lunch? Who would you choose for dinner? And why?
Wow. Well, for breakfast, I have got to say my wife,
Nice.
because she's an inspiration to me every single day. And I often say to her that it's the best part of the day, waking up next to you. So it's got to be her.
Oh, sweet.
And I think for inspirational characters, I would love to have a conversation with a guy called Royal Raymond Rife.
Okay.
He's long since dead and stuff like that, but he has an extremely interesting story. And I think dinner has got to be with Muhammad Ali.
Oh, nice.
I just think he epitomizes everything that I think is great in the world. I think he was such an inspirational man. And I would love the opportunity to have a chat with him, because I think it'd be quite funny.
It would be funny. It would definitely be. With the two of you, I do believe it would be fun and funny. Yes, for sure. Excellent. So for those who don't know, what is a motivation specialist?
Okay. I truly believe, right, that the language, that internal language that we use all the time, is generally negative, and we say stuff to ourselves that we probably wouldn't say to someone else about them. Yeah. So as a motivational specialist, I empower people towards the best version of themselves, really. It works. It works in all settings, in business, in sports, and generally in life. It's the secret is we all have the answers inside us.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just that we just allow all this static to get in the way. So that's what I do.
Absolutely, yeah. And while you're not a health professional, you've dedicated your work to empowering people in their well-being, like you've said. So what inspired you to help people in this way?
Oh, well, okay. I have a huge backstory, Tracy. And I would say for most of my life, if you like, I lived in the belief that I was something I wasn't really. I had a really good ability to make money, which I did, and I did quite well. And I was a driven businessman, if you like, and I was in the gaming industry, and then I went into the licensed trade and pubs and clubs and stuff like that, and had a great lifestyle. However, I thought I was Superman.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the illness was something that happened to other people. It didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm too strong, I'm too powerful, and wallop, and I've got to make the money.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it did. um, and I became ill.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the diagnosis in 2002 of actually what had been plaguing me for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a chronic health condition called multiple sclerosis,
Mm-hmm.
which was probably the most devastating news that I could have. Really, it changed my life
Mm-hmm.
completely,
Yeah.
completely. You know, my first marriage came to an end. I slipped into depression,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had a day. Well, it was probably the worst day of my life, if you like, but it was also the best day of my life.
Mm-hmm.
When I decided that the world would be better off without me in it, and everyone that knew me would be better off without me because I was just a burden. And I had an incomplete attempt at ending my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a real wake up moment for me because the thing that saved me that day, Tracy, was compassion. And it's something I talk about a lot
Mm-hmm.
for people now. And it wasn't compassion for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was compassion for the lorry driver whose wheels I intended to hurl myself under. And I suddenly thought, how is this going to affect his life?
Mm-hmm.
And I hesitated, and I glanced off the side of the vehicle. I was bruised, but I was alive, and it set off this process for me of change,
Yeah.
which is still happening. And I've probably answered your question in a really convoluted way there, haven't I?
No, so there's a story, and I think for anyone who usually helps people, there's always a story. So your story started with this diagnosis back in 2002 with MS. Of course, it's a devastating diagnosis. It changes your life,
Yes,
and it can change your life to the point where you feel, as you said, you feel like you're a burden, and you feel the way out of it is to perhaps take your life. But here it is, compassion stepped in, not for yourself, but your compassion for that driver. And then that's led to a series of changes in your life.
my God, yes.
Excellent.
I mean, in a way, and I'm going to say this. I think that it's enabled me to become the person I've always wanted to be.
Amazing.
It's I don't know how people would have described me back in the day, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I was very motivated by money, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope I was a nice person then.
Mm-hmm.
I hope. I'm sure there would be some people that would disagree with that, I'm sure, but I hope I was a nice person. But I'd been brought up to not show my emotions, really, Tracy, and people of a certain age, I think, were taught that it was weak to be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I can truly say that a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis and the events that came after that have enabled me to actually walk into my true power.
Amazing.
where I am in touch with all of my emotions. And I'm actually a proud man to be able to say that I'm quite happy to shed a tear, and I'm not embarrassed about that at all.
Exactly. Yeah, you should be proud. Yeah.
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 So there's been a huge amount of benefits that have come out of it for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah. And I can see why you'd want to help people. So how do you use that to help people who, like yourself, had that chronic illness or any deep or difficult challenge? How do you use your experience to help them?
I think, I mean, you using my story as an example.
Mm-hmm.
In 2008, I was told I was now secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, which is actually quite quickly, from a diagnosis in 2002 to 2008. It's only a short period of time, and I was already in the secondary progressive stage. And at that time, there were no disease modifying drugs available to stem the progress of the condition, you know?
Yeah.
And all that was on offer for me was drugs like gabapentin, pregabalin, baclofen, which I've used, but they don't really have a particularly good effect on me. I don't wear those drugs very well, and I don't like the side effects. So to all intents and purposes, I was on my own, really. You
Mm-hmm.
know, my neurologist told me I would be in a wheelchair in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
which to all intents and purposes was correct, because for most of my time spent outdoors, I was in a wheelchair
Yeah.
because it was safer. Because
Mhm.
I'd fall over and I've cut my head open, I've broken my fingers, and all things like that. Um, so I I want to target chronic health conditions because for me, I had this huge realization. One day it was this realization that I didn't catch multiple sclerosis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not infectious. You can't catch it from me. I can't give it to any members of the public.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how did I get it?
Mm-hmm.
How did I get it? And I started to delve into the whys and the what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I discovered other people that were living really proactively with this condition.
Okay.
And I thought, ooh, I want to be like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I set out to mimic, if you like, if you want to say that, mimic
Yeah.
what they do. And I changed my diet, changed my thinking, and that's the big one. And I
Okay.
think this is where people get stuck with chronic
Mm-hmm.
health conditions. It's in their thinking. They don't think they've got any power, and they have.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
So, in essence, and again, it's a long answer to your question, I'm afraid. Sorry.
And that's
I must
okay.
like the sound of my own voice, I suppose.
No, but it's good to give context because even in that short story, I'm sure there's so much more to cover, but in that short story, someone will know that yes, even though they have this chronic diagnosis, this chronic illness, there is a way you can live your life without feeling restricted and just the quality of life. It doesn't mean that when you have this chronic illness, it's the end of you. No, there's some things you can do, and there are people who are doing it. So those are the ones who inspired you. And I love that we're having this conversation today because this month is long COVID awareness month. So a lot of people are still left with the effects of COVID 5 years later. I'm one of them, but thankfully my journey is changing and I'm stronger and in a position where I can help others. But it's so important for people to understand there are people like you out there who have had this chronic diagnosis, you've done something, you found something, you said for yourself, your mindset shifted. So, and I know you've done an article on how words influence you, and you touch on the power of language. So what do you feel is one word or phrase that maybe people use that they don't realize is actually limiting them?
Oh, just one word, just one.
Or it could be, yeah, whatever it is.
I think the word I'm going to highlight first for me, and
Yeah.
it's my pet hate, if you like,
Yeah.
it's that word suffering.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
which gets prefixed with a lot of the conditions that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
You know, people are suffering with X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm saying that you don't have to suffer with these things. You can be affected by them, or you can live proactively with them, or
Yes.
but you don't necessarily have to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's difficulties, and I face difficulties in my daily life
Mm-hmm.
every single day.
Yes.
You know, multiple sclerosis is an interesting condition because it's
Mm-hmm.
quite unpredictable.
Yes.
But I always, when it's being a bit naughty, if you
Mm-hmm.
like, I
Mm-hmm.
kind of look at where I take responsibility for that because I've probably done something
Mm-hmm.
that I shouldn't have done, and not adhered to my protocols for the day, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd say to your audience that are affected by a chronic health diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
have a look at the choices that you are making in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What choices are you making? Because you may well find that some of them are a contributory factor to the difficulties that you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the word, if you like,
That's the word, yeah.
suffering.
Yeah, suffering. So what choices do you feel you've made that have helped you in your journey with MS? Then people can get some inspiration so they can apply to their lives as well.
Whoa. Well, I mean, fundamentally, I started to focus on what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
not what I had and
Mm-hmm.
what had been taken away from me, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, I refuse to dwell on things. Dwelling is a word, isn't it? It's another word
Yeah.
that we don't like because we do tend to dwell on things,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I know that whatever's going on is going to pass. It will pass. Um, so I would say focusing on what I wanted
Mm-hmm.
was the driving force behind change for me,
Mm-hmm.
because then I had to work out the things that I had to create in my life to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And at the moment, how would you describe where you are in your MS journey? Is it the same as back in 2002? How would you describe it in 2025?
Well, I no longer use the wheelchair,
Okay.
so that's a benefit, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Um, there are certain elements of the condition that I've really taken control of. There are some bits of it that are proving to be quite challenging, and one area of it that I had virtually no effect over at all. Um, but that's not going to stop me trying to
This is
improve it.
this is it. Yeah, like you said earlier, being proactive. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's life is a challenge.
Mhm.
And when you add in the ingredient of a chronic health condition,
Yes.
it makes it even more interesting, I suppose, if you like, So yeah.
And I know you said, you went, what drove the change was identifying what you want versus what you had or what it looks like you've lost. When you have that kind of mindset, how can that really help someone in their journey of chronic illness? Because I think that's really key when you identify, yes, I had this but this is what I want. I feel like it does something. What does it do for someone that can help them approach their journey with power and that control to do something?
Okay. I
Mm.
mean, one of the words that I hear a huge amount in the journey that I take with clients of mine, it's effort,
Mhm.
and it does take effort,
Yes.
and people don't want to take effort.
Mhm.
It's sad but
Yes.
true.
Yes.
But I think really changing that narrative to start with. I
Mm.
think also plotting your small wins.
Yes.
Yeah, and I really mean
Mhm.
your small wins. When you're living with a chronic condition,
Mhm.
I I'll give you an example of what I mean.
Yes.
One of the first things that I employed in my healing journey
Mhm.
was meditation.
Mhm.
Okay, and I really got quite into being able to calm my mind and
Mhm.
still. And I used to send little workmen out dressed in my imagination in little yellow coats and hard hats
Yeah.
down into areas of my body that I wanted them to repair.
Mm.
And I used to imagine them working on the nervous system and repairing the myelin sheath for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found that I started to be able to wiggle
Mhm.
my toes.
Amazing.
Well, that's nothing, is it? Wiggling your toes? Well, it was
Mhm.
a big thing for me because I
Exactly.
couldn't on my left foot at
Yeah.
all.
Mhm.
So that's the small wins that I'm talking about. And when I discovered I could wiggle my toes,
Yes.
I thought, ooh, what else can I do? And then I started working on my foot drop, and I
Mhm.
started to be able to tap my foot.
Mhm.
Then I could tap it to music.
Yeah.
That's a small win. It's
Yeah.
got to go in the journal
Yes.
because on this journey,
Mhm.
we need to be able to record them small wins because there's going to be a lot of troughs as well.
Yes.
And we mustn't get stuck in the troughs,
Mhm.
the dwelling bit.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. And in terms of, you said, sometimes the choices we make are key. So, what are some choices, maybe from when you wake up to when you go to bed, that have helped you through this journey?
Okay.
Yeah.
I've changed my diet
Mm-hmm.
completely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, you're a lifestyle medicine practitioner.
Yes.
The choices we make in food
Mm-hmm.
are crucial. And look, I understand that we have many pollutants in our environment, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah? But sourcing the best possible nutrition that you can,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be good and enriching for the body. Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't recommend any particular diets. What I recommend is I recommend people listening to their body and
Yes.
listening to how it affects whatever they're consuming, how it affects them. Yeah.
Precisely.
I'm mainly plant-based whole food now.
Mm-hmm.
I eat fish. I don't eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
And I did cut dairy products out of my life completely for a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
Although I have introduced some dairy products
Mm-hmm.
back in recently, but only when I was confident that I had my gut microbiome in a good state of health, if you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And in terms of, I know earlier you said calming your mind is important. In terms of physical activity, how does that play with the MS?
I try to move every single day.
Yeah.
Okay, I try to raise my heart rate every single day. There are days where that's more difficult than others.
Of course.
But like I say, I'm a work in progress.
That's it.
And
That's it.
I'm enjoying the journey. So
Yeah.
I think movement is essential. I mean, the advice I got right at the beginning of my journey was don't do too much.
Okay.
Don't exercise. No? Now, when you think about that information that's being given, if I was Usain Bolt, the fastest man on the planet, if he went home and sat on his couch all day long,
Yeah.
his muscles are going to deteriorate, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I just think we need to change that information that is being given out, and I'm sure it is now. I mean, I'm going back 20 odd years, aren't I?
Yeah.
All you young health professionals are more vibrant, proactive, aren't you?
Yeah, but it's I love that despite the difficult diagnosis, you've still found your own way, like you said, and you found ways to do things. Of course, there'll be days which are harder than others, but you're still aiming to do something. And I think that's really powerful for people with chronic illnesses, that there's always something you can do to your own ability. We're not discrediting the diagnosis, we acknowledge it, but we're just being proactive in doing something. And I know you mentioned the importance of small wins, because sometimes there'll be troughs. And I know around this time in March, people have either are celebrating their New Year's resolutions, they've achieved them, some are stuck. So I know you did an article also on New Year, new approach, and this fits in with what we're saying. So what do you think is the biggest flaw when people are setting these New Year resolutions or New Year goals?
Do you know what?
Yeah.
Right, I love that question because, well, number one,
Yeah.
people set too big. They're too big. They're too big. The goals are too big.
Yes.
Right? And number two, if you're going to do it, why wait till New Year?
Exactly.
Right? Start today. Start today. I had the pleasure of being invited up to London last week to a large law firm. And I had a group of law professionals and financial advisors and people like that chanting BVOMT. BVOMT. And that stands for best version of myself today.
Today, I love that.
Right. And I think that that's how we create change in our life. New Year's resolutions need to be, they need to be worked on. They need to be achievable.
Yes.
Yeah. And you also have to recognize that if it's a big goal, there might be smaller ones that you need to achieve along the way.
Yes.
So being the best version of yourself today is the key.
That's the key. I love that. Yeah. And I know you've said, why do we have to tie the New Year's resolution to 1st of January? And I think in your article, I don't know if you said maybe that's a form of procrastination. So
definitely.
Yeah. So how can we start changing our mindsets? Like I know you're saying just best version of myself today. So how do we start removing ourselves from, okay, I'll wait till the summer, I'll wait till New Year's? How do we start? Just use that BVOMT, or is there anything more we can do?
I think one of the most fundamental things that everyone needs to realize, right? You are the most important person in your life.
That's it.
Okay? It's not selfish.
Mm-mm.
It's not. It's not excluding anyone that you are caring for, but being the best version. Yeah,
Yes.
being that, being the most important person
Mm.
will benefit
Mm.
everybody around you.
Correct.
All those people that you name before you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it comes back to self love as well,
Mm.
self care, self love.
Mhm.
And do you know what? This is my life. I am
Yeah.
important.
Hmm. That's it. Yeah. And in terms of breaking down the goals so they can remain motivated, because people have big goals, then at the beginning you're excited and then but you don't realize it's because you set a big goal. So how can they break their goals in a way that will keep them motivated?
Well, I mean, just take one day at a time, really. I mean, smoking's a big one, isn't it? People giving up smoking.
Yes.
Just give up smoking for today, or alcohol. Another, I mean, look, in my life before MS, I
Yeah.
was in the license trade. I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and I did, really did. But I recognised that, and I cut it out. I cut alcohol out of my life, but I introduced something to take its place.
Mm.
So instead of that drink, I was having a fruit tea or something like that. It it's about, I suppose, breaking big habits is about it's about replacing it with something that is beneficial for you,
Mm.
that's not going to be damaging you.
Yeah, that's
Does
it.
that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah, it does. And I know, like you said earlier, every day is a new day. So every day is a fresh start. So
Mm.
how can people use that, especially when they feel stuck? Maybe they wanted to stop smoking today and then something happened. So how can they encourage themselves that, you know what? Maybe tomorrow is a new day. It will be a fresh start. I can do something.
Well, if you're going to fall over at hurdles that come along in your life, you really have to start questioning your beliefs and your abilities. You have to take a really deep look inside of yourself. There could be there could be another issue that's creating, and I think these damaging habits tend to be medicating away from. I'm going to avoid using the word trauma, but an event in your life that's created this belief about yourself. Yeah, that hurts. It feels uneasy inside, and I think that, and I suppose this is not a self promotion thing here for me, but perhaps if you are struggling with that, you might need to go and speak to a therapist. Really, someone who can take a look at you from the outside
Mm.
and work out that internal language that's tripping you up
Mm.
from achieving your goal. Yeah, does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Because unfortunately, like everything, we can't see what's behind us
No,
that's
that's all.
tripping us up.
Yeah, we
Sometimes
have
we
blind
need,
spots. Yeah,
yeah, we need someone. Sometimes we need help.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And when those setbacks happen, you're in the trough. How can we reframe them so that we are learning instead of dwelling on, oh, I failed again?
Well, again, it comes back to self love.
Yeah.
It comes back to being the best version of myself today. And sometimes we have to accept
Mm.
that we're not going to be perfect. You know, there is no such thing as perfection. You know, there's nothing perfect, but being aware of where you want to go is so important. And okay, sometimes that journey might be 1 or 2 steps back, but accept that. Don't use the word fail. It's just the first attempt in learning, which I'm sure everyone's heard that analogy of that, you know. Just make sure you fail forward, you know.
Yeah.
Accept, be kind to yourself, yeah. But don't be kind to yourself in a way that's harming you with the things that you want to give up in your life. Find something else. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. And I love that because it's tying into so when people sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes maybe we have limiting beliefs that are holding us back. So how can we start that process of rewiring or reframing the things we've believed that are holding us back?
Oh dear. Yeah, limiting beliefs. I mean, I love them. I
Yeah.
love them.
Yeah.
Um, I tend to use limiting beliefs, and I will reframe them into a positive, if you like. But I'm still using the same words, that internal language. Okay,
Mhm.
so limiting beliefs, and this is a message that I would love people. I really want people to get hold of this. Okay,
Mhm.
our beliefs are probably not ours.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most of our beliefs about ourselves are installed in us
Mhm.
years ago, in our childhood and in our early informative years.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll let you into a little secret. That's someone else's belief. That's someone else's thought about you,
Mhm.
but it's not you.
Mhm.
It's someone else's belief, not yours.
Mhm.
So you can create your own, can't you?
Mhm.
And you can.
You
You
can.
honestly can create your own beliefs about yourself. And we are powerful, powerful individuals.
Mhm.
And we have an innate ability
Mhm.
to heal from within.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you need to understand that. So these limitations, I mean, an exercise that I use with clients is I get people to write down their I am
Mhm.
statement.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Have you heard of that one?
Yep.
Yeah. And when people write them down, they suddenly realise how horrible they are to themselves.
Mm.
And they really are. And then you get people to write new contracts to themselves of
Yes.
actually how I intend to turn up
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
I'm going to turn up like this, or
Mhm.
turn up like that.
Mhm.
I'm not, you know, and those beliefs will always be there,
Mhm.
but we need to rewrite scripts over the top of them so that they have less and less and less and less power over
Mm.
us and our
That's it.
thinking.
Yeah. And I love that. I remember one session I had with my therapist, and she's like, she gave me this. There's a video on YouTube, passengers on the bus. So you may always
Yeah,
have those thoughts on your mind, but just let them talk, but you reframe yourself and speak to yourself. But the issue now is when we let these limiting beliefs define us, especially when we have maybe a chronic illness or a mental health condition. How do we balance acknowledging the mental health condition or the chronic illness without letting it define us?
that's a difficult question.
Mm.
That is,
Mm.
I think, I mean, I am not a medical professional, and I think I have thoughts around mental health, and I do, and these are my views. But I think mental health conditions are over medicated. Yeah, I think that the problem often is in our thinking. It's contaminated thinking. Yeah, it's a confusing thoughts type of thinking, but also it also comes back to those strong beliefs that we have about ourselves. And I've said they're not our beliefs, they've been given to us by someone else. Can I share a story?
Yeah, sure.
To highlight what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So when I was at school, and it wasn't, the dinosaurs weren't roaming the earth then, right? But it was junior school, and we used to sit on a table like in a square. Like, so all the and the teacher was at the front, yeah. And the teacher used to delight in getting me to stand up and read to the class, knowing full well that I couldn't. And the teacher laughed at me, and he'd get the class to laugh as well, right? Because I didn't know why. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I couldn't do it. The words would move about on the page, you see, for me. And I'd lose. I could read, but I'd go a line and then I'd be like on the third line, or I'd miss lines out because it was, yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
But that created a belief for me, a really strong belief that I was thick. Yeah. And I carried that with me into my 50s. Fortunately, because I was good at making money, I used to get people to do the jobs that I thought that I couldn't do. Yeah. But I've learned now what's the matter. I have a condition, I think it's called Eileen syndrome. I'm mildly dyslexic with this, but now I've got a pair of glasses. Oh my God. It's like putting a microscope on a book.
Yeah.
For me. And wow. And the crazy bit is that where I went from not doing any writing because I didn't think I could, you've named articles that I've written. You've named a chapter that I wrote in a book. I'm actually writing at this moment in time 2 books.
Okay.
And God, I'm loving it.
Excellent.
But I just wished I'd discovered it, or I'd been allowed to discover that all those years ago. And I think for me, Tracy, I think one of the messages that I'm giving out is, be really aware of the things that you're saying to your children and to young people.
Yes.
As parents, we don't get any manuals. No. We don't get a set of rules or guidelines, do we? But it really is important, those messages. That's how it was back in my day. I'm hoping it's better now, but I don't know.
Unfortunately, I don't feel it is. Yeah, but it's a strong message because those words they can be damaging, and people can carry them for a long time before they realize and start that journey of replacing those beliefs. And so it doesn't have to be that way, but yeah. It's needed, yeah. So for someone who's feeling stuck in their thinking, what do you feel may be the first step in making that shift?
I think I think really, like I said, write down that language that you're using. You know, become aware of what you're saying to yourself.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and then decide. Number one, have a look, and go. You know, is it true?
Mhm.
Is that true?
Yes.
And if you really do believe it is true,
Mhm.
find a solution
Mhm.
to make it not so, if you like.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we're talking about negative stuff that we're talking, and in general, I'm probably going to be quite outspoken now. I don't think I've actually had someone come to me when I've done the I am statements with anything good.
Okay.
I don't, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I can't
Mm.
remember any.
It tends to be more negative than, yeah. And why is
Yeah.
that, Chris? Why?
Because we are wired to
Mm.
be negative. It's a
Mm.
survival.
Mm.
It's a survival thing. It's our reptilian brain that wants to keep us alive. But unfortunately, in modern life,
Mhm.
you know, there are no saber-toothed tigers out there that are going to eat us.
Yeah.
However, you know,
Mm.
there's so many messages as well that we are being given that we should be like this or we should have that or we should, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And also, you know, you're encouraged to get this and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
But again, you know, I will say this to your audience:
Mm.
believe me when I say
Mm.
nothing, absolutely nothing that you can buy or achieve on the outside
Mm.
will ever change what is uncomfortable within. Ever.
Mm.
It just won't change it. You'll just have that,
Mhm.
but you'll still have that uneasiness or that
Mm.
blockage
Mm.
or that limitation or that negative belief. Yeah. So be aware that we are generally negative people. It's a
Mhm.
survival thing. And I suppose there was a really good book. I can't remember who wrote it, but a book called Feel the Fear
Mm.
and Do It Anyway.
Yes.
It's a fantastic mantra, isn't it, for moving forward?
Yeah.
Because change will always come with an element of fear.
Yes.
It'll be a fear of something, fear of failure, fear of not
Mm.
being good enough,
Mm.
fear of X, Y, or Z. But there will be a fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you've talked about, parents need to be careful with the words and maybe teachers as well. So, in terms of identifying whether our environment is supporting us or sabotaging us, how can we identify what we need to do to make sure our environment is supporting what we're trying to achieve?
Well, I'm not sure that our environments do support us
Mm.
really. So I would say, and it's what is it? It's key five, I think it is in the way to freer thinking. I think it's key five, and it's be aware of where you get your information. Yeah, we can all go to Google and we
Yes.
can all find things that will reinforce the belief that we already have about ourselves. Yes,
True. True.
but referred to earlier,
Mm.
they're not true. They're not true. Those beliefs are not true. Yeah. So I would say be really aware of where you get your information from. Yeah.
It's key. But not everything is true. Not everything that looks good is good for you. So we have to be careful, yeah. So if listeners are to take away one thing from this conversation, I know you said a few things. What do you want it to be? What do you want them to go? If just remember one thing, What do you want them to take?
I would say focus on what you want, not what you have.
Yes, that's powerful. That's powerful. And what's next for you, Chris? I know you said you're writing 2 books.
I
Anything
am,
you're working
yes.
on?
It's not easy.
It can't be easy, no.
Yeah, but yes, I am. I am. I intend to finish one of them this year, and the title's going to be
Uh-huh.
"This is not about me."
Oh, I love that already. Can you give us
Or
a
it could
taste of
be.
what it would be about, or shall we just wait till the book is out?
I think. I mean, initially, you
Yeah,
know, my passion,
yeah.
my passion is to address the chronic health explosion that we see in our communities today.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's our our communities are living in a state of sickness, not health and
Mhm.
wellness. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I just want to show people that they have a lot more power than we are led to believe. And I use my story in the beginning. Obviously, I'm using my story to show. I mean, multiple sclerosis, like I say, is number one. It's a unpredictable condition, and I'm going to be I'm going to be completely honest with you. Look, I'm not cured.
Yeah.
And the end of last year, I found myself admitted to hospital because I'd ended up with a lung infection that I was struggling to get rid of, and of course, then I needed pharmaceuticals,
Mhm.
but I just oh God, I feel quite emotional right at this moment in time because I just want people to be happy and healthier,
Yeah,
and they have the power to
they
achieve
do.
that.
They do.
Just don't believe they have.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They really do. So thank you so much, Chris. And I love that you just identify what you want. And once you do that, it could then decide or create for you the next steps. And then all you have to do, be the best version of yourself today. Today.
Today,
Leave it
today.
today. That's it. Yeah. So where can people connect with you, Chris? I know they'll be wanting to follow you or learn more about your work. How can they connect with you?
Okay. If you put my name in,
Yeah.
I'm all over the socials, and my story's out there. But the best way
Mhm.
to contact me is www.freerthinking.co.uk, and you'll find a way to have a chat with me.
Yes.
It's free. It doesn't cost anything to have that chat and a coffee with me. And you might have discovered this, but I like to talk. But do you know what I like doing more?
Yeah.
listening.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights. Just be the best be your best version today. I like that. Simple. And what do you want? So anyone can apply that, whether you have a chronic illness, whether you're just struggling with something in your life. So just start today, track your progress, and be mindful. What are you thinking? And turn it around. So thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. I'll put Chris's details on the description so you can connect with him. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified of the next episode. And until next time, take care of yourself. And thanks for watching.